I'm really excited to do this session. Ever since Welcome Challenge became an essential ability, I've just been embracing and loving it for the many ways that I think it helps us have conversations that are really important and that maybe we don't like to have. I should probably out myself right now as a perfectionist, and so Welcome Challenge is a good one for me to work on. So, what I want to do in this session is think about how often our fear of failure is behind our reluctance to welcome challenge. This is true in my life, and I'm guessing there's a couple of you out there who maybe feel the same way. So, welcome challenge is one of the essential abilities, and I want to explore that with you today. I think as we explore it, we can be better prepared to help our students explore it. So we're going to do a little activity, and I wanted to point out that my second now welcome challenge for this session, which I did realize about a week ago, was that this is not the best setup of the room for this particular activity, but we're going to go with it because I didn't ask for round tables because I didn't think I needed to, and this is where we are. So you're going to need a partner, and you're going to need a partner through the whole session. Just someone sitting next to you. We won't make this too difficult. I'd like to see if you can stand up and do this. So see if you can stand up. It doesn't take a ton of space. And Travis, have you done this before? Ta-da. Will you help me demo? Okay. So, so this is what we're going to do, and Travis is going to help me. So first of all, you're going to count to 3 back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay? And then if you screw up, which you will, you have to, both of you go, ta-da, like this. So Travis will do it from a distance. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, ta-da! Okay, ready? Go. Okay. We got our first ta-da. Excellent. Okay. Next. I can't get it back. Okay, next. There's more. Wait, there's more.
You gotta do like the silent hustle.
Oh, silent llama. Okay, silent llama. Here we go. All right. We're almost there. My student affairs folks were right on this. They were right on it. Okay, next thing, I'll just do one more. Clap for 1. Okay, so 2, 3. Ready? Go. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, have a seat. If you can hear my voice, you can sit down. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. All right, great. Awesome. Some of you are going to do it till you get it right? Okay. Perfect. Okay, I don't know if it's working. Is it off? Is this one working? I will use my teacher voice, okay? Did it get turned down? It was before. Okay. This is all part of the, I don't know. We'll try it. Okay. So there's 2 more steps to that. There's snap, clap, 3, and then there's stomp, snap, or snap, clap, stomp. Ta-da! Clap, snap, stomp. This is not just for fun, right? It's to suggest that we can embrace failure as an opportunity for learning. I do this with my students in my classes early in the semester. But the other fun thing is, ta-da becomes shorthand for, oh, I made a mistake, right? And I acknowledge it, I own it, and I'm going to move on. So I'm not hiding my mistake. I'm announcing it, but I'm going to move on. And it's really a lovely little shorthand, and the students kind of get into it, and it's just a lovely small thing you can do. So I'm going to tell you a failure story about Essential Ed and me. This is another thing that I learned as I started thinking about failure. There are institutions that actually hold failure fests, and people share stories of failure. I actually love this. I learned that one of the organizations within Google, when they have a product that has failed and they're not going to move forward, they actually have a little ceremony, and the people who worked on it, like, they bring it and they talk about what it meant to them, and they kind of have a little goodbye for it. And I'm like, that's pretty beautiful, right? Okay, so this is version 1 of my failure story. I was co-leading the ePortfolio working group. 2022-23, we had established that we would use an ePortfolio for Essential Ed, and we needed to choose a technology platform. We were part of a institute on ePortfolios during that same year. And so we previewed some platforms. We had conversations based on cost and assumptions about the ease of use. We made a decision. I'll tell you right now, that decision felt a little bit rushed. It was towards the end of the semester. You might recall we were trying to get a Senate proposal passed at the same time. So we were doing a lot of things. And I remember in one particular meeting with a vendor, I think there were like 2 or 3 of us on the call, and we were making a recording and hoping people would watch the recording, right? But we had to make a decision. We made a decision. I was really anxious about that. I made some assumptions about cost. The platform that we decided to go with had free accounts for faculty and staff. The other platform up front said that that was not the case. And I took that for granted. I'm not much of a bargainer. And so I thought, well, that's a big cost difference. I also don't have a lot of experience with technology platforms. I don't know how I got in the middle of ePortfolio stuff, because I really am not, I'm not a technology person. I'm an English major, right? Like, and I know there's a lot of stereotypes there, but still not a lover of that. And I also didn't really seek out a lot of help on this, right? I asked a few questions, but we had to make a decision. We made a decision. We worked with the platform over the summer. We were going to do a pilot. So we did do a small pilot. We didn't do a full-on purchase. And we ran a pilot in the fall in a selection of courses with some experienced instructors who understood sort of folio thinking and were willing to take this on. The platform itself was going through a major upgrade that summer, which extended week by week into the fall, still rolling out new features well into September. That was frustrating and challenging. Our students had some struggles with usability. Our instructors struggled to integrate it into Canvas, which it was supposed to do. I was really frustrated. I was disappointed in myself because I really wanted this to succeed, and I could feel it slipping away, right? You could feel the negative vibe. And I wanted to offer more support to the faculty than I felt like I was able to do. And I also didn't like to hear about the failures. I think I tended to blame it on the platform, right? I want to shift that because I do not like feeling this discomfort of, I don't know if this was the right choice. In the spring of 2024, after that fall trial, we kind of shuffled the group a little bit, not entirely because of the challenges, just because of where Essential Ed was at. We formed a new working group. I was no longer the co-leader. I was now kind of the liaison to the leadership team. So had 2 other people really taking a leadership role. They took a look at the results from our fall pilot, which included some surveys of faculty and students, and decided that we need to try some other things. And so we actually did a small pilot that semester and then explored the PebblePad platform, which we had looked at earlier. They also decided that the information that we had documented about that original decision was kind of thin. Like, we didn't have a really good explanation of why we picked that platform. So we did a decision matrix. We kind of laid out the various things that we wanted from a platform and what each offered. I felt really good about this shift. It took me a little more out of the center and let me consult rather than lead. But I also felt incredibly guilty because I had developed a close professional relationship with this CEO of the other platform. We had met on Zoom, twice a month, long conversations, really wonderful conversations about folio thinking and pedagogy, and just a great colleague that I loved working with. And I was about to tell him, we're not going to go with your platform. I'm a people pleaser as well as a perfectionist. Not my happy place. And I was also frustrated because obviously now we're well into the spring semester. This thing is going to launch in 2 years. We got to have a platform and we got to know what we're doing. We don't have time to mess around. But ultimately, we decided to go with a different platform. So we started over with our training. We set up fall 2024 pilots. We spent a lot of time in the summer training, rebuilding some trust, and going in a new direction. I felt good with the decision, but I felt frustrated because we had wasted time. And I also kind of felt like sometimes people made the previous platform the bad guy. And I felt like, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? So in summary, we made the wrong decision and we had to backtrack and we lost valuable time. That's my failure story. Now let me tell you a failure story. Whoop. That's supposed to say version 2. There is no end to the mistakes, but this is version 2 of that same story. Spring 2023, we previewed platforms. We selected this. This was running in parallel to many other things that took a lot of time and energy, including, I mentioned, the previous Senate proposal. We made the best choice we could with the information that we had at the time. As we came up with questions, we did consult with some folks who knew more. We did talk to CTL, we talked to IT. We were able to enroll in a limited number of seats, so we didn't do a full-on investment. We did a small investment, and we learned more from that process than we knew before. When we ended that pilot, we had learned a lot, not only about the platforms, but also about what we wanted from an ePortfolio platform. We were better able to articulate that. When we piloted in fall 23, I did my best to communicate with instructors as changes were happening, address problems as they arose. We found some workarounds. By the end of the fall semester, we were at a place where we were willing to acknowledge that we needed to try another option to see if there was something better. So we were at a place where we were kind of in agreement. Yep, I think we need to look at something else. Spring 2024, new working group, new leadership. I could step back. I was now in a position to give context and feedback, but I didn't have to defend my decision because it was no longer my role to kind of lead the decision. Having new people look at the problem opened up space to consider a change. That decision matrix we made was really a great way for us to separate the results and the features from our feelings about them and about the pilot, and recognize there's not one perfect platform. Like we could see, each one had different strengths and different weaknesses. And then personally, I happened to be at a conference that spring where the CEO of this other platform was also at the conference. And so we were able to have a sit down where I was able to say to him, I really value what you have done for me and my learning here. We're not going to go with your platform, but this relationship is important to me. And he was so gracious and lovely. And, we have continued that conversation. So just personally, I was able to sort of say, let's separate the decision from the person. Felt really great to do that. That was really important for me. Summer and fall, then, as we went through the implementation and pilots with PebblePad, because we had learned a lot about what we wanted out of the portfolio, that really shaped the messaging we were able to bring, the way we were able to think about training people, the ways that we kind of talked about it. It also helped us know that we wanted more opportunities for structure. We liked creativity for the students, but the structure part was important because we were going through the whole curriculum. We needed to have some ability to sort of help faculty to contain this thing, a little bit more. So we knew why we were choosing this platform. We had a little sandbox experience. We weren't able to do sort of a limited pilot, but we had a little experience. But in the end, I actually think that was a smart move on the company's part. They said, if you want to do this, we want to be all in with you to really help you learn how to use it, rather than sort of toss you in the pool and flounder. So in retrospect, I think that was very smart. We didn't know what we didn't know still. So although we continued to face challenges, we were more confident that this was the right decision and that we had some experience in working through difficulty because, as you can imagine, it was not the last difficulty that we faced. So we could kind of draw on that experience. So my takeaway from that is we tried things, we learned from the process, we were willing to take the risk to pivot rather than continuing to try to force the original decision to work. So 2 stories. I think you can see how the framing kind of makes a difference there. I want to talk about failure more with you. And I'm going to ask you to do an activity. Hopefully there was something like this on your chair. If not, you can do it in your head or any piece of paper. This is also something I've done with students with great success. Think about a project. I ask my students to think about a class or a semester or, whatever, something in the fairly recent past. Map it out in terms of what are some of the highlights? What are some of the low parts? Here is my journey. Woohoo, we're going to move forward. Let's choose a platform. Oh no, what should we choose? Yay, we made a decision. Let's get started. Oh no, this is not working. And then, we have a solution. All right. So make your own kind of map of something. I'm going to have you share this with a partner in a minute. Give you a couple minutes to do that. So this does not have to be beautiful. So I'm going to ask you to turn to your partner and just take a minute, each of you, to kind of talk through your map. What was it about? What were the highs and some of the lows? Okay. You probably didn't get really a chance to totally unpack that. This is a fantastic group. They're hard to pull back. All right. So you may have only gotten through one of those or whatever, but hopefully that's caused you to think a little bit about ups and downs in your own experience. So as a group here, and you could just shout these out, I've got a few questions and then we'll kind of go back into some discussion, but what emotions are involved in failure? What does failure feel like? Just shout it out, anything.
Guilt.
Guilt,
Anxiety.
anxiety, embarrassment, disappointment, shame, frustration, uncertainty, imposter syndrome. I missed that. Confusion. Yes. What are some of the consequences of failure? It does have consequences.
Lost time.
Lost time,
Lost money.
lost money,
Lost trust.
Stay-
Lost trust.
loss of trust,
Trust. Loss of motivation.
loss of motivation, yeah.
Loss of confidence.
Confidence, loss of confidence,
Loss of time.
loss of time. Are there things that feel like failure but are actually not? Yeah.
Make a student unhappy.
Making a student unhappy. Yeah.
Well, in my case, one person declined to participate in the project, but then that opened the door for somebody else who ended up probably being a better fit in the long run.
Yeah, someone declining to do your project opens up other things.
I think it gives, back to like the student example, I think it gives you an opportunity to demonstrate how to work through failure for the students when you fail.
Yes, your failure might be the window they need to see you work that out. Yes, yes. What are the conditions that make failure acceptable and a learning opportunity? What do you think needs to be present for it to become a learning opportunity and not just shame, disappointment, frustration? Yeah.
Psychological safety.
Psychological safety. Yeah.
Less time pressure.
Oh, less time pressure. Yeah. Yeah.
Job safety. Job safety.
Job safety.
So sometimes when your students consider somebody to be an expert, and they see that the expert's not great, fail, creates the window where then they don't.
Yes. So they might see you as an expert, but they recognize it.
Yeah, you can open up the window and start to failure.
And I think part of what you're saying there too is like having a conversation about it, right? Like contextualizing the failure, having an opportunity to provide that meta narrative for ourselves, our students, or reframing. Yeah, right.
Grading structures can be a hindrance or
Yes.
the other.
Grading structures can set up to either contextualize or support that kind of learning or not. Yes, which leads us into where we're going. So that's awesome. I think sometimes we need to recognize, a lot of times we need to recognize also that sometimes failure happens and we don't have control over that. And sometimes failure happens and we had some measure of control over it. And kind of being aware and contextualizing for ourselves, was that something over which I had control or didn't have control, the student, whatever it might be. Grappling with that, I think, is really important. Understanding that sometimes failure feels like not meeting other people's expectations, recognizing whether those expectations were realistic, appropriate, right? Meeting my own expectations. Were my expectations realistic, appropriate, right? All of those things are really, I think, important and part of grappling with failure and things that we can model for our students by kind of talking out loud about how we deal with failure. So can you talk about briefly, what's the difference between failing at something and being a failure? Talk to your partner. Okay, there it is. Here's another one. How does fear of failure keep us from welcoming challenge? So we've kind of, I don't know, I keep doing something there. Okay, so we've kind of talked through this a little bit. I'm not going to linger here, but how can we help students move to a healthier view of failure? And I think that sometimes students fall into a kind of binary, or maybe there's a continuum, but on the one hand, failure is awful, I don't want to think about it. Or, like, there's no such thing as failure, right? Like, I'm not taking seriously the kind of consequences of failure in this situation, which might actually be a way of masking failure. I don't want to think about it, right? Not taking it seriously. I think they're not unrelated. So I think a big piece of this is that we just need to talk about failure more. And I find this incredibly helpful. This is from the startup world. I'm not part of the startup world, but I love this because it has something called the trough of sorrow, which I am going to totally use for the rest of my life. But this is a very typical life cycle of a startup. I also think it's a very typical cycle of a semester, right? Or a project of many kinds. The tech crunch of initiation, the wearing off of novelty, the trough of sorrow, the releases of improvement, the wiggles of false hope, the crash of ineptitude, the promised land, the acquisition of liquidity, the upside of buyer. I mean, and there are various, this is called an S curve. You can Google and find all kinds of images, some of them more related to teaching and learning. But I actually think it's really helpful to show students this. I teach a class in professional development. The students do a semester-long project with a mentor. It's really the first big project that they've ever done, and they have a lot that they have to manage themselves. And I just try to show them this and say, this is what you can expect, right? There will be a trough of sorrow. And when you're in the trough of sorrow, I think if you can call it that, you're on your way up. If you can say, oh, I think I'm in the trough of sorrow here. What can I do to move myself forward? So I think that's part of it. And you can think about like, how might something like this help you normalize struggle, ways of talking about it. So what I'd like to do with most of the rest of our time, you should also have a sheet that has some reflection questions on it. I'd like you with your partner, pick one of these questions. There are some if you're an instructor, there's some if you maybe work with students, there's some for anybody to think about here. Pick one of those questions and have a conversation with your partner, and then we'll try to save a little bit of time for some sharing out afterwards. So pick one, have a conversation, talk about failure. So I'm going to call you back, even though I love these conversations. Finish your thought. I know you maybe didn't get back and forth, but lean in there. There we go. Okay. I'm just loving these conversations. I'm loving the fact that we have faculty and staff and community partners, and I mean, this is awesome. We never have these conversations, right? We never have the opportunity for this, so I'm super just enjoying that. Okay, did anybody talk about number one? How early in your course do students have an opportunity to fail? How much opportunity do they have to recover? What do they think they learn, or what do you think they learn? Is what they learn what you want them to learn? What are some ways to provide early opportunities to fail and recover with support? Did anybody talk about that? Want to share any thoughts you had? You're still reflecting. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, we are talking about the first question, and I kind of experienced training my students do research in the lab. I think like it's very hard to provide an early opportunity to overcome the failure. I think like failure part of the lesson or part of the training process. Even though I have provided very detailed instruction for them at the very beginning, but they have to learn by themselves from making mistakes. So I feel like it's very hard to have prevent earlier. Yeah.
It's hard to build in an early.
Yeah, it's part of processing and part of the.
Yeah. Did anybody have thoughts on how we could kind of address that early on when you're learning from your mistakes? Yeah.
I think one thing that we talked about that relates to this is just that even when you build in an early opportunity to fail, sometimes the students don't take advantage. If it's like low stakes, it's the first week of class, and it's like, say it's like an in-person quiz with Flickr, and they're like, oh yeah, that was no big deal, but then they kind of don't get it, and that this is helping them prepare for the exam, and then they still haven't taken advantage of it. So in some way, there's like, has to be that the experience of understanding that these opportunities are meant to help you prepare for them to take advantage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How we can frame it for them. And sometimes they just have to fail hard to really learn that lesson. How about number two? What opportunities, I think this builds on that, what opportunities do students have to reflect on their performance on high stakes assessments after they're assessed, whether that's tests or papers or projects? How might we provide opportunities for students to turn disappointing performance into a learning opportunity? How might we give students opportunities to demonstrate that they understood the feedback that they got from us? And is there a small bite strategy? I am all about the small bite strategy, right? Something small that I could try. Did anybody talk about that one? Want to share what you kind of ideas?
Yeah, we're talking about that. Yeah, we're talking about using, for example, with a big project, doing it in phases. For example, one of the things I've tried is to begin the final project, let's say week 3, and then they have opportunities to share, to present, and kind of work through bite sizes with feedback, and then they leading to a final submission at the end of the semester, so they feel comfortable working through that.
So taking a big project, breaking it up into smaller pieces. Yeah. But I liked what you said about, like, even on a big project, maybe having them present early and get feedback, like a little more formal, right? But in a way that, the other thing that does is it normalizes that, hey, it's week 3, we know you're not done yet, right? Like, but that one can benefit from feedback, and that breaking it up and working on it earlier, you can see the actual results of learning along the way. I think that's really helpful for students to, oh yeah, that was better than when I tried to do it the night before. Surprise. Anybody else have small nudges or things they could do? Yeah.
Just going to reflect on what you just said, Dave, when you do the small steps, measurable things that you can get better at. In engineering, and I don't know, like engineers, I don't know if you, they're really bad at admitting that they're failing. They don't do well with failure, to the point where there's some people that have been raised with parents that nothing's good enough. And so it's a danger when that becomes ingrained in you and you almost become addicted to seeking failure about yourself out. But you will never reach that. So it's important, I think, to touch here to give students a way where they say, you know what, that's enough. I did. I might not get the word being perfect. Well, I'm never going to get there, some personalities, but to have those small steps where you say, I got there, let's eat a sandwich. Because it can become an addiction with some people to never be good enough.
Yes,
and that's the downside of, you got to know how to suck to become better at something, right?
Yeah.
But it's not good to get to the point where you're just like, man, I suck, I'm never going to be good enough. I just scored 3 goals, I only scored 1.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the small step thing is, from a personal experience, what psychologists use. You're like, okay, give yourself a break and reach this.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you're getting at here is, like, there is some really deep stuff going on when we're grappling with failure. It relates to what we've learned about failure growing up. It's like, how have we experienced failure? Who gave us messages about what that looks like? And there's a lot going on in that, that we, we're not saying faculty should be therapists, right? But like, we probably just need to be a little bit aware as we think about and talk about it. I want to give another, I don't even know how I feel about this example, but I heard this at a conference. This is another institution. I don't know if there's any computer science people in the room. They would probably hate this, but anyway, computer science exam. It was a take-home. They do a take-home exam. They have to do this whatever program, but they tell students, if you have spent X number of hours on this program, problem, and you do not have the answer yet, you can write down, there is more to life than computer science, and the lowest grade you will get is a, C or CD or whatever. You attempted the problem, and I think they can verify that they spent X amount of time on it, right? Like, they can see from the exam. But what I like about that is probably spending 2 more hours on that problem is not going to get that student any farther, right? Like, if they've spent X amount of time on that test, 8 hours, 2 more hours is not going to help them. 2 hours of sleep might, and it just, it frames it so differently. I was so intrigued by that thought. I think the feedback too, like, are there ways that you can get students to reflect on their performance on a midterm, on a, and I know lots to do test wrappers, or I do teach writing. So, I wrote, you wrote, I gave you feedback, reflect on the feedback I gave you. So I know whether you're kind of hearing what I'm trying to help you with. What keeps Michigan Tech students from asking questions in class? That was question number 3. What strategies do you encourage students? Do you connect this to a fear of failure? I do, but I don't know. Did anybody talk about that one? Yeah.
We didn't, but I just like to speak to that a little bit. I have been very reluctant to accept that there seems to be a preference for anonymity when admitting you don't know something. So creating those openings, whether it's through a click for question or an anonymous Google form or something, there's definitely questions out there. But I found that really seems to help if they are able to pull this thing without outing themselves.
Yeah. I have not tried this myself, but I know people talk a little bit about sometimes if you start with anonymous questions as the semester goes on and everybody sees that, oh gosh, there's always questions. Other people have these questions. It could kind of pave its way into less anonymous and more owning the questions. Yeah. What keeps Michigan Tech students from seeking help on academic issues? What are some small bite ways we could make it easier for our students to seek help? And I don't mean necessarily easier like they can find the right office. I mean easier like getting over shame, discomfort, frustration, all of those things.
I think they're afraid of being perceived as not the right fit for Michigan Tech, or that they don't belong here, that they're not smart enough, this isn't the right place for them.
Imposter syndrome, we talked about, yeah. Yeah.
I think they haven't had to because they are coming from schools where they were the top of their class and they never need help. They were the people helping, not the people that needed help. So I think there's they don't have the practice.
Yeah. Does anybody have workarounds that they have found useful to get students to maybe nudge them?
Student told me they didn't know they could ask questions to a professor, and after they asked questions, their 50, 60 exam grades went to 90. And what I do is I always say I'm going to stay. My class ends at 4:45 Tuesday, Thursday. The classroom is not busy after that. I say, come now, it's a very convenient time for you, you can ask anything. And I make sure that others see that others ask questions, and that seems to work slowly for the better. You don't get immediate results, but over the semester, they come around.
Great, that's great. How do you manage failure in your own professional life? Anybody talk about that one? How do you process disappointing results? How do you honor failure? Yeah.
I shared mine with my UN 1011 students, like early on, to let them know, because there's students who have fallen below good standing and they have to get back to good standing, and I'm like, this is going to be uncomfortable, so let's try and get comfortable with it. And here, this is what I did, and my TA shared her failings also, and try to get a safe space there.
I think there's a very common assumption that we were all straight A students all the way through, and maybe that's not true. All right. I would love to do another whole session in which we, explore more and develop tools, but these slides will be available to you after the symposium. So I've pulled a few things together. The pre-mortem is something we have used many times now in essential education. This is a process where you get a group of people together at a point where you're kind of ready to launch something, and you say, okay, let's imagine all the ways this could fail. And everybody goes around and talks about how it could fail. And then you shift it to what could we do to either prevent that failure or mitigate that failure, or at least kind of plan ahead so we can deal with it. There's a link there to the process, and Kelly Steelman and I in Idea Hub have led many premortems and would love to teach more people how to do it. I think it's an incredibly helpful. And when you're working on a project, it does help kind of take the air out of that failure fear, because you're like, hey, let's all just say how we think this might fail. And then it's out there, and then we can grapple with it. The Odyssey plan is one I use with my students in professional development. It's like, what's your career path look like? And then what if that wasn't even possible anymore? That job just went away. What's your plan B? And then the third one is like, what would you do if money was no object and you didn't care what people said? And that is usually very revealing. So it's a really fun exercise for them to think through. There might be more than one plan. The project life graph that we used is, you can find that. The test wrapper reflection, there's an example here. I think people are maybe familiar with that, but I found that to be really helpful. Mike Meyer has started a welcome challenge strategy checklist, which I love. So Mike, I just made a copy of it so we won't mess up yours, but I did add at the bottom of that, if you have other thoughts about welcome challenge, you want to send them to Mike. He's kind of compiling a list of ways that we can frame welcome challenge for our students. And then here's just a few resources I have found fantastic. Freakonomics Radio, if you're a podcast listener, has had like more than one series on failure, which have been really interesting. There's a museum of failures out there, which would be really fun. I'm still reading and really enjoying The Fearless Organization, Creating Psychological Safety. It says in the workplace. I'm going to say in the classroom. I think there's a lot we can learn from that work. Designing Your Life is the source of the Odyssey plan and has kind of a lot of ways to think about how to frame failure. Mindset by Carol Dweck, and then her recent kind of revisiting the growth mindset. I think the growth mindset is a helpful way of us thinking about what does it mean, not that I am a failure, but that maybe I failed on that project. And some TED Talks. Shout out to Catherine Schultz. I just love this. At one point she says, what does it feel like to fail? And people say all those same things. And she says, that's what it feels like when you found out that you failed. Right? Like actually failing feels the same as succeeding until you know that you failed. And I'm like, whoa, that'll shift my thinking a little bit. So I would welcome, if I didn't think to put my email on a slide, but you can find me, Maria Bergstrom. If you've got resources, feel free to send them to me. I'll share them with the steering committee as we keep on kind of building our resource bank for how we can teach students in these essential abilities. But thank you so much for being brave enough to think about failure for almost a whole hour. And I really enjoyed it. So thank you.